I've never really read a poem that wanted to conquer or wanted to have more power. Poems aren't interested in that. That would get in the way of a poem. To be invisible, to be observant, that's much more the spirit of the poem.
Hello, and welcome to The Detour from Oregon Humanities. I'm Adam Davis. That voice you just heard talking about how poems don't want to conquer, they mainly want to observe, that's the voice of Naomi Shihab Nye, whose poems and presence have done so many good things for so many people over so many years. Naomi is an award-winning Palestinian-American poet and novelist based in San Antonio, Texas. She's the author of many acclaimed collections of poetry and books for children and young adults, including Grace Notes, Sidekick, The Tiny Journalist, and Words Under the Words. Naomi joined us in May 2026 at the Alberta Rose Theatre for our final conversation in this year's Consider This series on the theme Beyond 250. And even though Naomi talked some about politics and our nation's 250th anniversary, she also seemed to transcend both the moment and national borders altogether. Through her poems and the thoughts she stitches between those poems and the spirit that emanates from her, Naomi is a bridge builder. She brings us closer to the shared world so many of us hope for. Here's Naomi starting the conversation off with her poem Trying to Name What Doesn't Change, one of a few poems Naomi read that resonates strongly with some of the big questions our Beyond 250 initiative has been exploring.
Trying to name what doesn't change. Roselva says the only thing that doesn't change is train tracks. She's sure of it. The train changes, or the weeds that grow up spidery by the side, but not the tracks. I've watched one for 3 years, she says, and it doesn't curve, doesn't break, doesn't grow. Peter isn't sure. He saw an abandoned track near Sabinas, Mexico, and says a track without a train is a changed track. The metal wasn't shiny anymore. The wood was split. Some of the ties were gone. Every Tuesday on Morales Street, butchers crack the necks of 100 hens. The widow in the tilted house spices her soup with cinnamon. Ask her what doesn't change. Stars explode. The rose curls up as if there is fire in the petals. The cat who knew me is buried under the bush. The train whistle still wails its ancient sound, but when it goes away, shrinking back from the walls of the brain, it takes something different with it every time. Thank you. And I would say since I wrote that poem some years ago, I definitely have thought a lot about that question, what doesn't change? I mean, administrations change and attitudes change, but there are these principles like hope or democracy or every person's voice matters that don't feel as if they change.
Can I follow up, though, a little bit on that and ask you about when you think about the nation we're in and things that don't change and things that do, what first comes to mind?
Well, I always think about my father because he was an immigrant at the age of 22 to the United States from Palestine. And he came here because he imagined a sense of welcome that could include him. And to me, this has always been a country of welcome. And even if many people pretend it isn't, or doesn't want to be anymore, I don't find that manifesting itself. Wherever I go, I find a profound desire among people in every place to welcome one another and to welcome people who aren't exactly like them. I mean, that was my father's thrill about the United States, that you got to meet so many people from everywhere. And our house was always filled with immigrants from different countries, and that idea, there's room for us, there's space for us. I think that's what eventually drew him to Texas, was the big horizon, the spaciousness, that idea anyway, the metaphor of space. And I think people still hold that close. You know, I live in a 63% Latino city. And so the idea of people from Mexico not being the total heartbeat of our city is a crazy idea. It's unfathomable.
What's behind asking people what doesn't change? What's
Well,
the feeling behind it? What's the hope there?
I'm trying to find what is enduring, what offers comfort to people in their own times of sorrow or trouble. You know, I think anyone in this room who's ever worked in workshop situations, whether with children or with adults or with anyone, anywhere, and so many wonderful workshops happen around the world that I think we all cherish the idea of people inviting other people to write, to talk. That's part of humanities. Just that sense that we all might have a different response, but no one would be wrong. I mean, I don't recall anyone telling Peter, the boy who was arguing with Roselva, that he was wrong or that she was wrong. They were just going, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. And then the whole thing that came up about the train whistle, we have very prominent train whistles in old San Antonio downtown. And the idea that all these kids and I heard these train whistles at night. And what does it make you think of? And then that became a whole other writing topic. You know, when you hear that whistle, it made some people wish they were going far away. It made some people lonely for someone in their family who had disappeared. You know, it made everybody think of something different. So that idea that any of us who work in workshop situations, we're always trying to evoke someone else's interpretation of something or metaphor around something. Like, I think one thing that's traumatizing these days is people who want everything to match. What? Why? I always love seeing like somebody wearing two different socks, or you sit down at someone's dinner table and all the napkins are different. And you think they're not caring about this matching idea. They just want you to have a place and a napkin and a plate, but it doesn't have to look like his or hers. And that whole concept of matching, not matching. I mean, I see the strength of the last 250 years as diversity. So when diversity became a different kind of word a few years ago, I was working for a Texas State University then, and suddenly not only did diversity training cease at the campus, but we weren't ever supposed to say the word. And I looked around the table of my writing students, and they were from Syria, Lebanon, Nigeria, Mexico, Malaysia. And I'm thinking, how can we not say the word? I mean, it's a beautiful word. That's what this country is.
Another kind of diversity in this poem, again, you say, ask the widow what doesn't change.
Yeah. Well, that's time. There's time. I'm a different person than when I first came to Oregon, because so many things have changed in the world and, you know, in family, and our beloved ones move on past vision, and they're still with us always. And how we come to terms with that, you know, how we have a birthday party for someone who's no longer there, or how we, you know, just understand one another's losses differently as we live. I mean, so far I haven't met anyone who doesn't experience grief or loss. And so that idea that we can always ask each other Well, what did you do? And maybe I should throw this out. My Palestinian father used to say, people always asked him, he was a journalist, a newspaper journalist, but he had started out in radio working for the BBC when he was a teenager in Jerusalem. But people would always ask him, do you think there's any hope for Jewish and Arab people living together in peace? And he would always say, of course I do. We're all Semites, for starters, and we're part of the same family. And the land that we seem to want to live on is very small. And when I grew up, we were all playing together and sharing food. And why couldn't we live together? Look at this country. And then he would say, people just need to ask different questions like, what's hard for you? What hurts you? What makes you feel scared? Not, we want to take that whole village and make it ours. I mean, that's not a question.
Well, so, I mean, both asking a question and asking questions about the other person.
Yeah, because by then you develop so much empathy, you would not want to take their village.
So you just spoke about your father, and I want to actually ask if we can go to the poem Blood.
Blood. A true Arab knows how to catch a fly in his hands, my father would say, and he'd prove it, cupping the buzzers instantly, while the host with the swatter stared. In the spring, our palms peeled. True Arabs believed watermelon could heal 50 ways. I changed these to fit the occasion. Years before, a girl knocked, wanted to see the Arab. I said we didn't have one. After that, my father told more stories. Shihab, shooting star, a good name borrowed from the sky. Once I said, when we die, we give it back. He said that's what a true Arab would say. Today, the headlines clot in my blood. A Palestinian boy dangles a toy truck on the front page. Homeless fig. This tragedy with a terrible root is too big for us. What flag can we wave? I wave the flag of stone and seed, table mat stitched in blue. I call my father, we talk around the news. It is too much for him. Neither of his two languages can reach it. I drive into the country to find sheep, cows, to plead with the air. Who calls anyone civilized? Where can the crying heart graze? What does a true Arab do now? Well, I had no idea when I was a child all the sorrows to come. I kind of thought war was over. You know, you heard about war when you're a child and you think, oh, people are smarter than that now. And all the religions say thou shalt not kill. And it's been confounding to me. I would say the biggest trauma in my life is how much war does exist and how the common person can't stop it. I mean, we can speak against it as much as we want, and we keep doing that, but we can't stop it.
I think this is related to what you've just said about our not being able to stop it, maybe.
Yeah.
The refrain in there is this idea of your father saying, a true Arab. And I think I want to just ask about that phrase.
Well,
Like, what's a true Arab? What's a true American? What does it mean to say something like that?
you know, I think the word humanities comes up. What creates a sense of your humanity within community? What makes you feel at home somewhere? What makes your most humane instincts, rise up? and be made evident. And so for people to be speaking out for justice wherever they are, I herald and cherish my Jewish friends who have been speaking out as much as they can over the past years, saying how this does not represent them. I treasure my Arab friends and their grief and their constant worry and trauma over what's happening to people we are connected to in other places. And I think, community to community, and sometimes the smaller the community, this can be evident really quickly. I once worked in a program, thank you, Kim Stafford in the Northwest Writing Institute for getting me involved with this wonderful program with Oregon rural libraries. And so I got to go to towns like Clatskanie and Astoria and many small towns around the state of Oregon and work in Oregon libraries with other writers, Oregon writers like Terrence O'Donnell and John Daniel and just great people from this state, and hear all this humanity from the different backgrounds of towns and communities that created the texture of Oregon. And in Texas, too, I've worked in so many rural towns in schools. So there was this feeling always that wherever you go, poetry is there. Poetry is waiting for an invitation to emerge. There are so many things these people care about that we could celebrate together, savor, describe, discuss. So many people still write about, what they're doing in their lives with their writing. And you just think writing and creating and making, and I think of all this as humanities work, is savoring life, that's sharing life, that's welcoming that variety, that difference, the different strains of possibility. Whereas the tone of the moment may not be as conducive to that, but I haven't met anyone anywhere yet who says they really don't want to have that. Everyone still wants to have that. So we need to keep speaking about it, how important it is.
But it's in a way, it's that anyone, anywhere that I'm especially curious about. That I think you're making an argument for a kind of universal humanity.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what I want to ask about is what your father's talking about.
Yeah.
When he says a true Arab, which again is actually, it's bigger than any nation. It's supranational.
Yeah.
And with this, we're going to see a lot of big red, white, and blue flags in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
And so I guess I wonder how you think about the national fitting with these other ways we think about being together. We think about who we are.
Well, I think it's very difficult when you're in a country that has been promoting a lot of war and bloodshed and disaster and money for weapons in other places, to feel very proud of that when you're abroad, when you're in other countries. And, kids in France ask me all these deep questions with tears in their eyes about how hard it must be to be an American and see, what was happening in Gaza and know that I was paying for it. And I said, yeah, it's really terrible. It's so horrible. But that's not all that we're paying for in our country. And there's so many of us who wouldn't pay for war if we could figure out a way not to. And, just to keep talking about it and keep identifying as so much goodness is happening at the same time as these strident voices are suggesting otherwise.
Yeah. If I were to push you to do a version of what your father does in this poem, where he says that's what a true Arab would say, that's what a true Arab would do.
Yeah.
What if we switched the word? What if we said a true American?
What would a true American do? A true American would keep speaking. Always keep speaking. Don't be shy to speak. Yeah. And, one thing that happened, for example, at Texas State University was the students were told they couldn't write any op-eds about all this advocacy for Palestine on their campus. They couldn't write about it. They had to pretend like it wasn't happening. But we saw it happening, but they couldn't talk about it. And so they kept doing this thing where they kept interviewing me because they kept saying to me, you want to retire anyway? So if you get kicked out, you'll be happy. But we want to finish our educations. So there was this predominant series of interviews with me. And I kept saying to the students, this is getting ridiculous. Everyone's going to say, who is this person in creative writing who never shuts up? But they didn't get in trouble because it was me talking, and I didn't get kicked out, but I did leave. I mean, I retired this year.
Yeah. But always keep speaking is...
Keep speaking. And kids want to speak, you know. If you talk to kids about speaking, is it important we speak out? They'll say, yes. Absolutely, all the time. We have to keep speaking. And the whole idea that someone would feel ill at ease about speaking truth or speaking honorably about, you know, I really believe in thou shalt not kill. I was a religion major and every single religion says that. So I'm going with them. Thou shalt not kill. I'm adhering to every religion on earth that says that, you know. I'm not defying my country. I'm adhering to the bigger spirit.
I wonder if we can follow that to one of the other small group of poems we talked about, and that's a newer poem, the poem called Bridging.
Thank you. Some of you here knew our son when he was a boy. He loved Portland. He thought this was one of the great cities in the world he ever got to visit. And yesterday would have been his 40th birthday. And he died almost 4 years ago, complications of COVID. And he was seemingly the strongest one in the family. So that was pretty sobering. My 94-year-old mother at that time never even got COVID. And he got it 5 times in a row quickly. It was hard to function after that and go back into the world. And so Adam and I were talking about how many times in our lives or in shared history of our nation, we have to bridge a difficult time just listening to people's stories. So I was trying to write, well, how did I come back into wanting to be with, you know, society and other people and cultural experience. And so this poem has 3 parts. It's very short, though. It's dedicated to Lorraine Anastasio, who is a San Antonio friend, and W.S. Merwin, the poet, who loved William Stafford so much that the year after William Stafford died, W.S. Merwin started every one of his readings with William Stafford poems. Bridging. Lorraine made a cup of tea to serve to a grieving person in a peaceful upstairs room. Honey in a small vial, a spoon, ginger or cardamom, something calming. I would be safe there from chatter or questioning. The ceiling rose to a high peak and held me. My friend gently left me in solitude with steaming brew, and I could hear the world going on downstairs and wish still to be part of it or not. But I wasn't called upon. There was memory warm in my hand. How we come back. Someone makes a bridge. We walk slowly across it. Or time makes it. We hold what we can, stare out across water. No need to carry everything we thought we knew. Only a few things will soothe, and they keep changing. Someone saying the hummingbird is her father may help her, but not you. William's redbird landed on the railing of his lanai every breakfast for a blueberry, a crumb. William spoke to his friend even after he was blind. He felt her when he couldn't see her, his bridge to sky. After he died, it was sad to think of her landing and waiting. Anyone who ever sat with him there probably tried to live differently with people, birds, wherever they were. Such a small thing, maybe. So these totemic moments of comfort are often what we have to offer one another. And I think of poems as these totemic objects of comfort. I've always loved how a poem can be carried, as William Stafford did, in a pocket, or you can write it on a card, or you can write it on a Post-it note very tiny and stick it to some neighbor's door when they need it or when you think they need it. And there's just something so endearing and compact about a poem, how it tries to notice, cherish, and savor, and then pass it on. You know, I've never really read a poem that wanted to conquer or wanted to have more power. Poems aren't interested in that. That would get in the way of a poem. To be invisible, to be observant, that's much more the spirit of the poem.
First, I want to say it's very generous of you to share that poem
thanks.
with us.
Thank you for letting me. It's up to Adam. He's calling the shots.
Yeah. In that poem, in the second section, you say, how we come back, someone makes a bridge.
Yeah. Someone welcomes you to be who you are. Someone asks you a question and you're able to feel calmer for a moment. I think a lot of people have experienced a lot of trauma. I know the trauma I've experienced within the past 4 years is I just didn't even know that, I could experience this much trauma from so many places. But then I'll find myself sitting down to read a poem by someone else, or to write a poem, to work on a poem, or to think of what I could possibly say to encourage others to find a poem in their own experience. And that becomes a way back. You don't have to have a way back to everything. Well, now my life's going to be okay. Now everybody in Gaza's going to be safe now, or they're going to have a place to sleep. And the Jewish people and Arab people who always believed in togetherness are going to figure it out. You can't do these big things sometimes, but small things. I just thought of something I should definitely tell here. And it was thanks to a Portland friend, Corey Pressman, that this even was able to happen when the Poetry Foundation out of Chicago, a town that matters to both of us, asked me to be the Young People's Poet Laureate in 2019. They told me that I could dream up projects anywhere, and they would pay for them. And I thought, wow, this is nice. So I thought, I'd like to go to Portland, Oregon, one of the most open-minded places I've ever been, and have a full day of writing workshop with Jewish and Muslim kids together. I think that might work in Portland. My only problem was, where am I going to get these kids? And so I called Corey, my friend, and said, could you help me do this? And he connected with a rabbi over here, an imam over here, and different communities. And we gathered somewhere, a beautiful community space in Portland, and spent the day together writing. And it was an unforgettable day. It was so beautiful. And a lot of adults came because we had requested middle school age students, which I think made some people edgy. So they weren't sure what we had up our sleeves, but it was just writing together and sitting in a mixed way. And one thing I hadn't anticipated But of course, thinking of both cultures, it made sense. Everybody brought food. There was so much food everywhere. And so we were eating and writing and talking and sharing. And at the end of the day, except for the person who stood up and identified, I'm a local rabbi, and the person who said, well, I'm a local imam, and this was a beautiful day. And the kids, they made no distinctions one to the other, like, don't want to hear your poem. They listened raptly. I had no idea who was who, by the way. I mean, it was all just a mingling. I had to kind of figure it out from some of the details in the poems because we all looked like the family we are. And Portland did it. And I believe this could happen in every city, and I believe it could and should happen, as it has happened, in so many places in Palestine and Israel. And how many times is that on the front page of the New York Times? Only now and then. It's not that important. But look at the hand-in-hand schools started by an American. Wonderful. Look at the Nevi Shalom village. Look at Seeds of Peace. Look at Rachel Corrie and what she did. So many groups, all these groups of connection, the East-West Orchestra, the circus. There's so many things of mixed people, but that's not stressed. We're not giving our money to that. Why not?
You're listening to The Detour with poet Naomi Shihab Nye. You're moving us toward the last poem that I will ask you to read, or short story. I'm not sure whether you call it a poem or short story, but I want to, and that's Gate A4, I want to get there in a minute. I want to ask you another question about bridging. In bridging, there's sort of bridging from living to death. There's coming back from that. We talk about a lot of our work, Oregon Humanities, as bridging the kinds of differences you're talking about now. That is, all the things that there's a lot of attention to dividing us.
Right. And
when I'm listening to you, and I get the feeling when most of us are listening to you, we feel like, yeah, we can do that. Why aren't we doing it? We can all do that. And then we go back and it's very hard.
Right. Well, I think many of us get frustrated because we can't do bigger things. Like we can't stop all weapons going somewhere. We can't stop war. We can't rebuild all the houses in a place, or, the cities in Ukraine that have been devastated, and all the systems of daily life that have been disturbed everywhere. I mean, that's something that is huge and overwhelming to all of us. But all of us have contact with certain communities. Like you work in schools, or you work in hospitals, or prisons, or whatever your community may be. And you have a way to impact that community by speaking out. I feel like I've been very attached to all the schools in Texas for all these years. I haven't worked in every one of them, but I've worked in tons of them. And just talking in different schools about what is happening here that's encouraging these students toward greater togetherness and greater confidence and greater hope together. And kids want that, and teachers want that. But so we have to work in small ways in whatever communities we can impact. And I think sometimes we're very frustrated by that. And so we tend to clam up, or someone insults us. And people have asked me, how do you respond to all mean comments on things you post? I say, I've never read them. I never read any of them. How do you respond to mean book reviews? I never read them. I never saw them. I didn't go searching for them. So, what are you going to focus on? Where is your energy going? To meanness or to possibility, And humanities does that. Years ago, I was asked by the Humanities Council or Commission in Wyoming to do a civility tour when that was the
That was Jim Leach's when he was the chair
Jim
of the
Leach's,
NEH.
right.
Yeah.
That was one of his projects. After he came after William Ferris, right. And so I asked if we could do this in Wyoming in tiny towns. We could have a tiny town tour. So we did 7 tiny towns in 6 days, and it was incredible. Like one town that had population 12, we had 48 people turned up at the poetry reading. That was impressive. And then we had a workshop where we were going to talk about civility. And the thing that I noticed in that town is everyone kept taunting the veterinarian. He took care of all their horses and cows in that part of Wyoming, that region. And he kept saying, "You don't think I love language? How do you think I make your horses well? I whisper in their ears. I speak to them." I was so touched by this because I didn't know any of these people. And to hear them making fun of him, "Why would you come? You don't even have a syringe with you today," or something. And he was having to stand up for the fact that he was a person who believed in language and loved literature and had been a reader all his life. And, some of the towns it was native issues. Some of the towns it was development issues encroaching on this precious native land. Every town had a different issue of civility. So that was very interesting to find out.
And maybe it's worth saying that Jim Leach was a Republican congressman from Iowa who, when he was the chair of NEH, used a word that I think, civility, that many people react even to that word in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, people acted like it was so old-fashioned. Because I would ask people, first thing, what does civility mean to you? And they would go like, "I've never used that word in my life. I've never even thought about it."
But the veterinarian talks about whispering to the horses.
Yeah. And speaking poems. He had more poems memorized than anyone. Because he said, "I spend a lot of time in barns." I mean, come on.
So maybe from barns to airports, can we go
Barns
to Gate
to
A4?
airports.
I think this follows what we've been talking about in a number of ways.
And I want to say that, being a roving poet, we start thinking retrospectively at certain age. I feel like I've had the most touching life imaginable. To get to listen to people everywhere I go, never to have found a place yet where poetry does not live, where poetry did not precede me, and where people don't have a desire to share their thoughts and share their care. That's a big part of civility, was caring. Why are other people coming to this community and not caring about what we've grown up caring about here? So, this was definitely a conversation to write about. Okay, so sorry to any of you who've heard this before, but I'm very touched. I do bow down in Albuquerque now every time I pass this gate. I feel like it's become my cathedral.
Many of us do, I think.
All airports, in that airport especially. Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal, after learning my flight had been detained 4 hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of Gate A4 understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate A4 was my own gate. I went there. An older woman in full traditional Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled to the floor, wailing. "Help," said the flight agent. "Talk to her. What is her problem? We told her the flight was going to be late, and she did this." I stooped to put my arm around the woman and spoke haltingly. "Shu dawa, shu bitek habibti, stanna shway min fadlik, shu bitsawi." The minute she heard any words she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso for major medical treatment the next day. I said, "You're fine. You'll get there. Who's picking you up?" Let's call him. We called her son. I spoke with him in English. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons, just for fun. Then we called my dad. And he and she spoke for a while in Arabic and found out, of course, they had 10 shared friends. Then I thought, just for the heck of it, why not call some Palestinian poets I know? Let them chat with her. This all took up 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling of her life, patting my knee, answering questions. She had pulled a sack of homemade mamoul cookies, little powdered sugar, crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nuts, from her bag and was offering them to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single woman declined one. It was like a sacrament. The traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo, we were all covered with the same powdered sugar and smiling. There is no better cookie. And then the airline broke out free apple juice from huge coolers, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving it, and they were covered with powdered sugar too. And I noticed my new best friend, by now we were holding hands, had a potted plant poking out of her bag, some medicinal thing with green furry leaves. Such an old country traveling tradition. Always carry a plant. Always stay rooted to somewhere. And I looked around that gate of late and weary ones and thought, this is the world I want to live in, the shared world. Not a single person in that gate, once the crying of confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive about any other person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those other women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know, reading that in Portland feels somehow more moving than most places because you create that spirit in all your places, in your schools, your libraries, your everywhere. Thank you for doing that here. And by the way, some people have asked me why she only offered cookies to the women, and it was because the men had all left to the bar. The men were all gone from the gate. There was not one man. That's a fact. The women didn't want to miss the plane in case it came early. We're very punctual.
I'm just drinking water and I'm with you here. I'm not going to the bar. But I do have a question for you.
Adam,
it won't be that
good.
question.
Yeah.
The moment of breaking out the cookies, the connection between you and the woman at the gate seems to depend on the crisis that precedes it.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, so beautiful. Well, we should have a lot of cookie sharing in the coming years. A lot of cookie sharing. That's what we have to do. Yeah. Yeah. We have to do even better things. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the thought is there's crisis all around us. We got what we need. Let's do it.
Yeah. We have to keep reaching out to more people in times when it feels more awkward, maybe, or more potentially fraught if someone doesn't welcome you. Well, what's the worst thing that can happen?
I did just hear someone say more scary.
Yeah, more scary.
That fear is, I think, one of the even earlier when you were talking about like and fear. There are reasons to be afraid. So how to still feel
to be judged. Yeah, people are going to judge you and maybe cast you out or put blame on you like the students were afraid of. I did ask my students when school started last year, that maybe the first session when we got together, I said, how many of you are feeling more anxious in your daily life than usual? Every single student was. And that made me so sad because we need to bring out the best in one another. And that's one thing I've always valued about schools. What is your strength? What can you do? What do you have here that's worth sharing?
You're listening to The Detour. Before we wrapped up our conversation with Naomi Shihab Nye at the Alberta Rose Theatre in Portland, we invited questions from the audience. Here are a few of those questions and Naomi's responses. Just before we get to the first question, can we say a big provisional thanks to Naomi?
Oh, no. Thanks. Thank you. To you. Yeah. And thank you. And also, we also take answer. If you have an answer, but not a question, we'll take that too. Yeah,
that's true.
Thank you. Welcome.
No answer. My name is John Hickox. Naomi, you have given me what I needed tonight. When I was your age, I still had hope. I've lost it. I've been taking people over there to Ramallah, to Hebron.
Oh, thank you. You've been taking people there.
Yeah, 21 times.
21 times?
And maybe...
I'm clapping for you.
Oh, yeah, but maybe one of those people has actually grabbed a hold of it. They're afraid of losing family members, which happens.
Yeah.
Best friends.
Yeah.
But I've kept going, except for the last 3 years, three and a half years.
3 years you couldn't, yeah.
So tell me what I need to keep going.
Well, just keep talking about what you already know, John, and why you took them to begin with, because you felt them connected to their plants and their land and their humanity. You felt their humanity, right?
But the people I took did not.
The people you took did not feel it. Oh. Well, here's a poem just for you. Grief Tsunami. This is in my next book. You can imagine how short the poems are when you hear this. Grief Tsunami. Thinking how Palestinians would have stopped everything to feed you. That's true, right, John? Yeah, very true. You can't even take a walk without somebody trying to feed you there, even if they have nothing.
They're beautiful people. They're like you.
Thank you, John. My heart is with you. We have to keep hope.
I want to thank you for reading that Mamur cookie story. It introduced me to you many, many years ago.
Thank you.
And I went to an international food store to find all the spices to make Mamur cookies and share them with my friends.
Oh, you're
Thank
beautiful.
you.
They're hard to make, right?
Yes, they are.
They're very involved, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. I bet you have some good bakeries in Portland that have them.
That's true.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Ahlan wa sahlan. My name is Maral Atala, and I think everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, and we got tickets to come see you. My sister's here with me. Tomorrow's the anniversary of my father's passing. He's from Homs, Syria. I watch the news, and I'm actually glad that he's no longer alive to see what has happened.
Yeah, I hear that. I feel that too.
I teach at a university, and I talk to students about the importance of telling your narrative and your stories. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned your son. I do this. I haven't been able to write my father's obituary, and it weighs on me because I want to honor him. And you brought up the poem about the hummingbird, and I think that about my dad. And I just want to know, for you as a writer, have you ever had a time where you felt you needed to write something so deeply, but you just couldn't do it?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
You didn't know how to do it? Because I feel like I need to do it, and there's time is weighing on me.
Well, yes, definitely I've felt that. I couldn't write anything for a few months after our son died. I mean, I couldn't write. except for a thank you note for soup or something. I couldn't write any writing. And I'd never had that experience since I was 6 years old where I couldn't write. It was terrifying to me. I felt so lost. Just think if you could approach your beautiful father from Homs, and I've been there. I love that community. If you could approach the littlest things about him, I think we get in trouble when we try to do the full life story, because we could never do enough homage to their full life story, their bravery, all they faced, all they struggled, everything they did. But we could write little stories, little tiny things, like even the girl coming to the door asking for the Arab when I was a child. I mean, that really happened. And I wrote that when he was still alive. You know, I found that you could approach people who were overwhelming to you because they were your most important people only in these small anecdotal ways, or quotes from them, actual quotes, little things. Don't feel the pressure of you have to do him justice, because something little does him justice. Some little scene that you remember, that you care about, that will help you come back to his spirit and his presence in more writing.
Thank you.
Approach it through the tiny doors.
Thank you.
Thank you. My love to you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Haven. I'm only 14 years old, and sometimes when I look at the news, like, I'll just see stuff and it's all very scary, especially because I am so young, and sometimes it just feels like there's nothing I can do. So I was wondering, like, what ways do you think young people can help?
Oh, you're the heroes. 14-year-olds are the greatest idealists of the world. I cheered. I love your age. You know, I think 14-year-olds are even more idealistic than 18-year-olds. So keep finding things that are really beautiful to you and meaningful to you. Whether they're a book you read, a movie you see, some music you start listening to, just keep finding things that uplift you, to give you strength in your own idealism. And then share it with your friends and find out what are they doing to make themselves feel more hope in our world. And, getting involved in grassroots projects, little things you can do in your neighborhood, any little thing you can do that makes you feel better. I wrote a whole book about picking up trash, because picking up trash for many years now makes me feel better in my downtown neighborhood. And I just like when the whole place is clean. And today on the way to the airport, we saw a fox, and I always consider seeing foxes in a downtown urban center one of the side gifts of picking up trash, because you seem to see them more. Just find little things you can do that make you feel better and give you hope, and share them. And you have a lot of ways you can share them in your school, in your community, with your friends. If you use social media or anything, just find positive things to share.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
You can do it. I just had the idea that if we could each close with a poem, it would be a nice way to bring it back. Poem by someone else whom we admire.
And maybe I should go first. And since William Stafford's name has been in the room, I'm going to read one that many of you may know. And I feel a little funny reading it, but I also want to share the poem. It's a ritual to read to each other. And thank you for suggesting this as a way to close tonight. If you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home, we may miss our star. For there is many a small betrayal in the mind, a shrug that lets the fragile sequence break, sending with shouts the horrible errors of childhood, storming out to play through the broken dike. And as elephants parade, holding each elephant's tail, but if one wanders, the circus won't find the park. I call it cruel, and maybe the root of all cruelty, to know what occurs, but not recognize the fact. And so I appeal to a voice, to something shadowy, a remote, important region in all who talk. Though we could fool each other, we should consider lest the parade of our mutual life get lost in the dark. For it is important that awake people be awake, or a breaking line may discourage them back to sleep. The signals we give, yes or no, or maybe, should be clear. The darkness around us is deep.
Oh. Maybe hasn't that poem grown and changed even over the years? I feel it's grown, like every little phrase of it has deeper resonance now than, yeah. And you think about the poets who have meant everything to your life, as William Stafford did to my life, and you think, who would I even have been without this voice? So much gratitude for their work, their vision, and for the people who keep sharing it, carrying it on. So thank you for reading that, Adam. Our mutual life and the small betrayal of the mind. That, wow, it's breathtaking. So I'm reading a very short poem by a journalist, a Palestinian journalist, who was a friend of both my father's as a journalist and mine as a poet. His name was Samih El-Qasim, and he was from Nazareth. And his poem is called Travel Tickets. The day I'm killed, my killer, rifling through my pockets, will find travel tickets. One to peace, one to the fields and the rain, and one to the conscience of humankind. Dear killer of mine, I beg you, do not waste the tickets. Take them, use them. I beg you to travel.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, Adam.
Naomi Shihab Nye is an award-winning poet and writer based in San Antonio, Texas. You can learn more about Naomi in our show notes at OregonHumanities.org. Check out our other Beyond 250 programming while you're there, including our community conversations through Beyond 250, recordings of past Consider This events with Elaine Landemore, Akil Reed Amar, and more. And a heads up that our 2026-2027 Consider This series will be on the theme, What Can We Trust?, starting in September with Stephanie Land, author of Made and Class. Thanks for listening to The Detour from Oregon Humanities. Anna McLean is our producer. Allie Sylvester, Karina Brisky, and Ben Waterhouse are our assistant producers. This is Adam Davis. See you next time.